Let's talk about the Amsterdam Acrylic Portrait Set. This set includes six 20 ml tubes of Amsterdam Standard Series paint, made with 100% acrylic emulsion and high-grade pigments. These paints offer great light fastness and a variety of opacities. Amsterdam Acrylic is a medium viscosity paint, making them very user-friendly with smooth application. The tube includes a lot of helpful information, so let me show you this diagram where to find the symbols and what they mean. Also, don't forget to check the back of the paint for the pigment number. This set features a selection of premixed portrait colors ideal for creating natural skin tones. The first color we'll be swatching is titanium white, which is one of the most commonly used whites in acrylic painting. Titanium white is a bright, cool white that is highly opaque, meaning that it can cover underlying layers of paint with ease. This is particularly useful for creating highlights and lightening the skin tones with allowing that underpainting to show through. A little goes a long way due to its strong tinting power. Next up is Naples Yellow Red. It has a warm golden hue with a subtle reddish undertone, making it ideal for mixing midtones and creating natural sun-kissed warmth. It has a very low tinting strength compared to other colors in the set, so keep that in mind as you mix other colors into it. A lot of people use this as a base for a light Caucasian skin tone. Caput mortuum is one of my favorite colors of all time. I use it in almost every piece of art that I make. This in particular is Caput mortuum violet, which is a beautiful color for adding shadows in lighter skin tones or folding into the paint and mixing for those more middle to darker range skin tones. In place of using a red, it can neutralize cool tones or add warmth to portraits. Yellow ochre is one of the most fundamentally and widely used pigments in portrait painting. It's a warm, earthy yellow that has been used for thousands of years and remains a staple on most artists' palettes. Yellow ochre provides a natural, balanced warmth that is perfect for giving skin a natural appearance. It is a very opaque color and it can also be used to balance out cooler tones. Raw umber is another common color in portrait painting, particularly valued for its deep, cool, and earthy hues. You'll notice that it has a subtle green undertone. Raw umber is a semi-transparent color, which means that it's wonderful for glazing or very buildable for underpaintings. Burnt umber is created by heating raw umber to high temperatures, which gives it its characteristic rich reddish-brown hue. The process is where it gets its burnt name. This color has a very high tinting strength and is also a semi-transparent color, commonly used for glazing or underpainting as well. Next, I'll demonstrate how to create a color mixing chart. I've created a 6x6 grid with 36 squares, which allows me to test out all of the color combinations within the palette. The top of the grid will show the mass tone, while the bottom half will offer a wash. This helps visualize how colors interact and serves as a guide for mixing skin tones from reference images. Having this chart handy while working with the palette will let you see how to mix specific colors from your reference. When working with multi-pigmented colors like these, things can get muddy pretty quickly, which is why it's helpful to have a clear starting point for mixing, such as a color mixing chart. I find this palette to be a simpler way to mix portrait hues compared to starting with just the three primary colors. Instead of focusing on mixing pure primaries, you're working with warm and cool tones while considering each color's tinting strength to achieve the desired subtle, muddy typical tones of skin. So, just to review, we have our main swatch colors down here in the center, the washed out version down below, and the full strength above. And as you can see, we have the full range of skin tones that can be achieved from fair to dark. The Caput Mortuum Violet and the Yellow Ochre together is going to make a beautiful base color for our initial wash of the sketch that we'll be painting together. I found this reference of a very gorgeous woman on Pinterest. I'll put the link in the description if you'd like to check it out. For my sketch, I'm going to use graphite, and I'm focusing solely on proportions, not line sensitivity or shading, because the acrylic is going to fully cover it, unlike the watercolor washes where you may need to be a little bit more mindful. I'll start off by combining the main mix of the Caput Mortuum Violet and the Yellow Ochre to get the beautiful orangey brown combination, and I'm also going to add a lot of water to it. Keeping it thin allows me to still see my sketch underneath. When creating your first layers, especially for portraiture, don't worry too much about perfection. Think of these early washes as a foundation that sets the tone for the entire piece. Acrylic paint is forgiving and you can always build up more layers to refine your details later. So if your first layer looks a bit messy or uneven, that's perfectly fine. It's just part of the process. With darker complexions, hold off on using white until you've established the midtones and shadows. Adding titanium white too soon can make the colors look flat and chalky, stripping away all that warmth and vibrancy of your mix because of the titanium white's cool tone nature. Instead, if you want to lighten your colors, try adding a little bit of water for a softer wash, or mix in Naples Yellow Red for a warmer, more natural lightening effect. I did decide to add black into this palette as well, just because I wanted to get more contrast out of her hair. And that's what I love about a palette like this. It can be used to supplement what you already have. And if you're getting frustrated painting skin tones by just mixing from primary colors, then this can be a good way to simplify the process. Painting portraits can be challenging enough, and starting from primary colors can be even more daunting. I don't personally think that there's really a wrong or right way to paint portraits. I think you should just play around with a few methods and palettes and see what process you enjoy the most. I personally prefer painting with some of these more natural kind of earth tone colors because it takes away from that extra mixing that goes into creating these muddy colors. I'm typically a mixed media artist and will use multiple mediums, but I really wanted to try this palette without other materials just to see how it mixed on its own. There are definitely many advantages to working with acrylic paint. It dries quickly and it's waterproof once dry. That makes it perfect for layering, which I'm sure you've noticed that I'm building up quite a few. Because this paint has a medium viscosity, you can paint very thickly with it, and directly if you prefer not to layer. This paint can also easily be thinned down for a wash. There's a variety of opacities in this palette, and it gives you more versatile mixes and ways to use the colors. One trick that can really help with capturing accurate proportions in portraits is to flip your reference photo and even your surface upside down. This technique forces your brain to stop focusing on what you're painting and instead focus purely on shapes, lines, and relationships between the forms. Now that I've got my portrait to a place that I'm happy with, I'm going to add some finishing touches with stamps for a little bit of extra interest. It's a simple way to introduce texture and subtle pattern into the piece. Today I'm using a stamp set by Kat Kerr to create a delicate lace effect on the shirt and a couple tattoos. I'll be layering a few different paint colors, mainly raw umber and titanium white, on each stamp transfer to build up kind of a soft, intricate effect. Acrylics are so versatile, and because they're buildable, I can control how subtle or bold the stamp becomes. I used both of the umbers for the butterflies to get different warm and cool effects on the skin. I love how these little details can take a piece from finished to something more personal. It's a fun way to make artwork your own and gives it a unique layered texture. Even though I've worked directly from a reference photo, this step helps me put a little bit more of my own spin on the final piece. I hope that you found this palette breakdown helpful. It's a great mix for creating natural skin tones and depth in portraits. Do you prefer mixing your own skin tones or using pre-mixed colors? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching and happy creating!